Thank you, and I congratulate Mr. Kennedy.
The gentleman suspend for what purpose? The gentleman from New York rise.
Unanimous consent request, if I can, to yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Ney, and that he be able to yield such blocks of time as he may deem necessary.
Is there objection? Hearing none, so ordered. The gentleman from Vermont is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to congratulate Mr. Kennedy for his leadership in this area. Let me just make a few brief points. Number one, at a time when this United States Congress provides $125 billion a year in corporate welfare, tax breaks and subsidies to large multinational corporations who don't need them, at a time when we're spending billions on B-2 bombers that we don't need, at a time in which we have given huge tax breaks to the richest people in America who don't need them, I am not impressed by a policy which over the last 4 years has cut back on public housing by 25%. We seem to always have funds available to help the wealthy in corporate America, but when it comes to the need of working people or low-income people, suddenly it is on their backs that we're asked to balance the budget. The economic facts are very clear. Just the other day, we read in the papers that the CEOs of major corporations now make 207 times what their workers make, while the new jobs that are being created are low-wage jobs, keeping people in poverty after 40 hours of work. In my state of Vermont and throughout this country, there are millions of people who are working 40 hours a week, and then they're being asked to pay 40, 50, 60% of their limited incomes for housing. There is a housing crisis in this country, and the way you solve the housing crisis is not to cut back on funding and not build more affordable housing. Now, my friends here say on the Republican side, they say, we don't want to warehouse people. Okay, don't warehouse them. Then why do you cut back on Section 8 funding so that we can spread people out throughout the community? There are many types of models for affordable housing other than public housing projects. But why you don't support those? So those are just words. That's not reality. Now, in terms of public housing, we hear these horror stories, and I really think that that is not a nice thing to say. Sure, there are problems, some serious problems within the projects, but to give grotesque examples of what one family does is to cast aspersions on all of the people who live in public housing. So let me tell you, I was mayor of the city of Burlington. We have public housing, and it serves its purpose well. It provides safe, affordable, clean housing for hundreds of people, and it helps people. It allows them to get a footing in their lives. And I resent the fact that we talk about horror stories in public housing. You know what? Rich people kill their kids, too. It's not just poor people. Furthermore, in terms of this work requirement, one of the points that was made during the discussion in committee was that we have a home interest mortgage deduction which allows multi-millionaires to deduct the interest up to $1 million on the mansions, on the fancy houses that they are living in. So we have a public policy which provides a tax break for multimillionaires who own mansions. Now that is an interesting housing policy when at exactly the same time you're cutting back on housing for working people and poor people. And I think the suggestion was made that if you're going to have a work requirement for poor people who get a subsidy, what about the millionaires who get a subsidy? Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has